Hello and welcome. You have found a tutorial on how to hand draft notes, titles, and numbers on architectural drawings. So we are going to take a look at a sample of some notes on a drafting board and look at some tools, and then we'll be off and running. This is a drafting board. And what you're looking at is a T-square. This is old school. And I like this kind better than some of the modern metal or plastic ones. You have a clear area here, drafting tape. This is actually artist's tape. It works very, very well. You can use it to tape the paper you're going to draft on to your board. It will not hurt the paper. This is an old school lead holder, and it has inside of it a 2mm lead. And you can see the shape of the tip is a little bit different from a pencil or a mechanical pencil. These are old school for drafting, and you can change the shape of the tip to suit whatever you're drafting. So we'll use one of these. When we're inking, there's a variety of technical pens available. This one is by Micron. Let's get it in the light, see if you can see that. So Micron, the size of this pen tip is an O1. It's a small pen tip, very good for lettering. These are archival ink. So you want a black ink that is not going to be smearing if it gets wet. So you need something that's waterproof. And you can see that this has a very delicate technical tip. So we're going to work with this. What happens if you screw up? So this is called an eraser shield, and you should have all of these tools in your drafting kit, maybe with the exception of the pen, but everything else you should have. And this is an eraser by Mars Stedler. It's a plastic eraser. The end that has not been used very much is clean, and you can see it's sort of an off-white color. This is the kind of eraser you need when you're drafting. It will not crumble, and it's rugged enough to properly erase if you make a mistake. Another tool that you need is this draftsman's brush. So what is that? When you erase, you get little crumbs, and you just sweep your page like this. You don't want to use your hand to brush the crumbs away because you may get oil from your skin on your drafting board sheet, and the dirt will stick to that. It will look grubby and messy. You also don't want to blow because the moisture in your breath can make water spots and also ruin a drawing. So, draftsman's brush, just like that, easy. And then the last tool we need at this moment is, this is called an architect scale. And you can see right here, this one's by Stedler. It's an architect scale. So this actually is a triangular shaped tool. You can see that, I think. And it is read either from the left to the right, or depending on the scale you're looking at, it may be read from right to left. So these are extraordinarily useful tools. If you're drawing a building, no sheet of paper is apt to be big enough to make it what we would call full scale. So you're going to need to shrink the drawing of the building to fit on the sheet. And this scale is one of the tools you need to do that. So for example, you could look at this side, which is very often used, 1/4 inch going across in this direction. So you've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 feet here. but that equals 1 inch. So this scale would be read as 1 inch equals 4 feet 0 inches. So you could fit 4 feet worth of a building into 1 inch on your drawing sheet at 1/4 inch scale. And that allows us, and there's larger and smaller scales that can be used. This allows us to put a building onto a sheet of paper. It's architect scale. So these are the tools. This is a sample sheet of lettering. So these are all capitals, and you can see there are some faint guidelines. You can see there's a vertical guideline here. I think it's just visible. And then horizontal guidelines. So we're going to draw our own sheet and letter it. Here, this, where it reads, this is ink title, scale equals 1/4 inch equals 1 foot 0 inch. This was done using the micron pen instead of the lead and the holder. Look at the difference in the contrast and the readability. So in the old days, we would always do the final, at least the way I was taught, we would do our final drawings in ink. It becomes an archival permanent record of your work. Then for your client, you make copies of those drawings. But you would use pencil while you're working out the design and for the preliminary drawings. So I'm going to demonstrate how to do some lettering like this in pencil and then also in ink. So we'll pause here. I'm going to set up a new sheet on the drafting board. These tape in the corners, you can see this one up here quite clearly, is in fact this artist's tape. That's it right there. 1/2 inch white artist's tape. Look at how easily it comes off. It's not ripping the paper, and it's not hurting the drawing board either. So I actually find that you can reuse your tape. So you do not need to roll out 6 inches of tape for every drawing. We don't need that much. So let me remove this. Now, I want to show you guys this. This is a roll of trace paper, and it's a buff color, or it used to be called canary. This stuff is great. When you roll it out, this particular color for my eyes makes a lovely contrast, and it's easy to read. The way you tear it is like this. I'm putting my scale up against the roll. I pick up this edge, and I'm just going to lift and tear. That's all there is to it. And it made a pretty darn clean tear. So can you notice, because this was on a roll, the edges are curling. So if I were to take these edges down, it would tend to still want to curl, and I might catch it and tear. So instead, I'm just going to flip it. Now the curl is against the drafting surface. And now the tape is going to go on like so. I don't actually want to put the tape diagonally at the corners. It's better, it holds better. You'll be able to see it very clearly up here, and you can also see it down here. It holds better if you do this. And it's easier to remove as well without damaging your sheet or your drawing. Now let's look at the T-square again. I, by the way, have a bit of ribbon on the end because I often store these by hanging them in my drafting studio. These come in different sizes. So now let's get our tools back on the board. We've got our sheet taped down, and I did not tape the sheet way down at the bottom of the board. The reason for that is that I want to be able to draw at the bottom of the sheet. If I were to tape it all the way at the bottom of the board, the T-square wouldn't fit. So by taping it a little bit above the bottom of the board, plenty of space to rest the T-square and still be able to draw. Let's begin. So I am going to sharpen my lead holder, or my lead, excuse me. So here's another little piece of drafting gear. This is a lead sharpener, and it works like this. Inside here, there are gears, and then this tub catches the graphite. I actually have used the graphite before with a little paintbrush, and you can draw with it and make really interesting halftone drawings. So you don't necessarily want to throw away your graphite. Once you drop your lead holder down, see this? Down into this cone, you will feel as you wiggle it, there's a moment where the lead has dropped down into the gears. Hear that? Hey. I keep a tissue handy. People sometimes, if they're wearing jeans, they'll just wipe the graphite crumbs on their jeans. Look at the shape of this. This is quite a bit different from a mechanical pencil or a number 2 pencil or an art pencil. With this shaped tip, you can draft beautifully and easily. But I don't want to leave this much lead showing. This is about right. This I can draft quite easily, but I won't be apt to break it. You could even make it a little shorter. You could even do this. This is about 1 centimeter, or if we're talking about American feet and inches, it's about 1/2 of an inch. So that's plenty of lead to stick out of your lead holder and draft with. So the first thing we're going to do is make a vertical line on the sheet. That's going to be our first guideline. So I need to smooth the T-square up against the edge of the drafting board. Otherwise, my vertical lines will not be vertical. Once you smooth the head of your T-square, rest your weak hand on the T-square and your triangle. Cross over, and now when I draw, as long as I'm not talking, there we go. When I was talking, I lost my focus and this happened. It's a little zig in the line. That's no good. What we want is a nice clean line like this. And by holding the T-square here and crossing over it, I can watch the line that I'm drawing, keeping my hand at the same angle. This will be a very clean line. It's counterintuitive. You have to get used to crossing like this. By the way, that does amazing things for your brain. Trust me, you can Google neuroscience and crossing your center line. This is how I clean up the boo-boo of that first line. The eraser shield is designed to be able to erase what I want to erase without taking away what I want to keep. And there's the brush. Good as new. All right, now we will start with 2 kinds of notes. There's both a title for a drawing, and let's say that you want to write a larger note. So if I take this original page here, this would be an example of a larger note where there's 3 lines of print. And these are examples of titles where there's the title for the drawing and underline, and then the scale. And this one is pencil, this one's ink. So we're going to do something like this. So what we want to do is create guidelines. Now, there are different sizes your letters can be. If you're in my drafting class, we are working at drawings that are 11 by 17 inches. This is on the small side for architectural drawings, but you will find there may be times when you want that size of sheet. For my students, they're easy to transport. You can fit those drawings in a tube like this, which will drop right into a backpack. And so easy to transport. You can use a small drawing board that, again, if you need to carry it with you, you can do so. So for that convenience factor, we use this size. You can also photocopy them. Another convenience factor. So what I'm going to do is this. We're using the regular ruler side of our architect's scale. Can you see this, camera? So it's divided 0, 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. Each inch is subdivided into sixteenths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. For the purposes of our lettering, this is extremely useful. We want our letters for notes to be 1/8 of an inch, so this big. And then we want 1/16 of an inch between each line of the notes. For the title letters will be a little bit larger. They'll be 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to start with notes. So to the left of my guideline, I'm going to make a series of little dots marking off 1/8 inch, 1/16 inch, 1/8 inch, 1/16 inch, 1/8 inch, 1/16 inch, 1/8 inch. Now, using this lovely T-square, I'm going to draft the lines, and I will be quiet because I need to actually pay attention. Now, I want you to notice something. As I draw, I roll the lead holder ever so slightly. I'm going to hold it like this, right? And as I roll, my thumb is moving away from my heart. And what this is doing is it will keep the tip of this lead more symmetrical longer, less sharpening, cleaner lines. I don't know if the microphone's picking this up, but I also often exhale when I make a line. All right. Now, I think the camera can see this. And you notice that I am drawing on top of my T-square. Normally, when you're drafting, you're always drawing on top of your T-square. But we're about to see the exception to that, which is lettering. Now, in order to letter, you need the smallest triangle in your kit. So you can use a larger triangle. The smaller the triangle you use, usually the easier it is to use. Now, after just telling you that we draw on top, always on top when we're drafting a building, when you're lettering, you draw underneath. There's method to this madness. When you make your first line of letters, you will then slide the T-square down, and this clear part is sitting up above the page and will cover that first line of letters. So then when you make the second line, you're not dragging your tool over the letters you just drew, running the risk of possibly smearing or smudging something. So always underneath when you're lettering, but when you're drafting or drawing, always on top. All right. So here we go. I am going to start with the alphabet. Now, general principles. I snug the T-square head against the edge of the drafting board. I rest my hand on the T-square so it won't move. I come over to the left of the to the right of the guideline, to start my lettering. These dots and the guideline will eventually be erased. They're only here to show me where the letters go. All the letters are going to be capitals. We're going to stroke up along the triangle for the verticals, freehand the diagonals, and freehand all the curves. So I hope the camera can pick this up. So I'll start with the A, which actually I draw freehand. A, B, C, D, stroke up, freehand the curve. E, stroke up, freehand the curve. F, I'm freehanding the diagonals, stroking up on the triangle for the verticals. F, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, freehand. H, I, J, I usually freehand those. K, stroke up for the vertical, freehand the diagonals. L, M, N, O. With O's, zeros, and Q's, you stroke a curve to the left and a curve to the right. Oh, P is next. Here comes the Q. R, S, T, U, V, W, X. Now for Y's, I stroke up the vertical and then I make the top. And Z. There is the alphabet of 1/8 inch letters. I'm going to say underneath it, how about this? 1 diagonal, 1/8 inch. Letters. There you go. Now, one of the things I want to point out is that 16th space is very, very small, but it does allow us, let me see if I can slide this down so it's closer to the camera for a sec here. Let me see, yeah, that works a little better. So this tiny space between the lines allows us to read them more easily. If there were no space and the letters were smashed up against each other, it would be very confusing. Look at how we write our numbers also. the 1/8 inch is written as a 1 that fills between the guidelines. So that's a 1/8 inch 1. The diagonal, same thing. It goes all the way between the guidelines. The 8 does also. So when you're writing your scale, you'll see this again. Let's do that next. So now let's pretend this is a note, and it's a note showing what the alphabet is and showing 1/8 inch letters. And we have some extra lines here, which we're not perhaps going to use. A title is going to have 1/4 inch letters. So I'm going to draw the whole alphabet again at 1/4 inch, skip a little space, and then 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/8, 1/8. We're going to write a title. So the alphabet, I'm going to do this. I think you can see the rolling of my tool. Okay. So now this is a 1/4 inch instead of an 1/8 inch. The letters will be a little bigger. And again, because I was drafting long straight lines, I worked on top of the T-square. But now we're going to letter. I work underneath the T-square. So I will freehand angled letters and curving letters, but I will stroke up along the T-square for the verticals. So first I snug the head of my T-square against the board. And now I'm resting my weak hand on the T-square and then using my thumb to hold the triangle. B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X. Look what I do for the Y. Stroke up, and then the Y is finished. Z. So these are now 1/4 inch letters. And now I think you can see, let me change the angle slightly. I think you can also see the 1/8 inch letters above. So the 1/4 inch letters are good for titles. The 1/8 inch letters are very good for notes. And you can see that. This would be large enough that it would probably fill up too much space on our sheet of drawings. This you could fit the notes that you need pretty successfully. So now what I've done here is put some dots to the left of the guideline. I'm going to do another series of guidelines and we'll make a sample title. And I'm going to make 2 sets of guidelines so I can show you ink. Roll the tool as you draw. This line will be darker. Over here, it's still going to be faint because I'll ink that. And then the scale is usually at the right for a title. And it doesn't usually take up the whole length of the title. So now I'm going to letter. And now I want to point out this triangle has tape on the sides. The reason for that, this one does not. We have a latency. This one does not. The camera might be able to see that there is, you can just barely see it. Right along this edge, there's a bevel. This is called an ink edge. And that bevel keeps the ink from wicking against the plastic of the triangle and blobbing on the paper. That can happen via capillary action. This little triangle doesn't have a built-in ink edge. See that? It's a smooth edge. See how it reflects the light as a smooth edge. And so, by putting drafting tape, even the minuscule thickness of that tape, it's so thin our eyes almost can't see it, it's enough to break the capillary action and keep ink from blobbing on the page, wicking underneath the triangle. So that's your trick for inking. But the first one I'll do in pencil, the second one I'll do in ink. Tuck the head of your T-square back against your board, slide your hand along, use your weak hand to hold your T-square and rest your thumb and your finger on this triangle and you can move it. All right, so how about we just say drawing title? Very simple. Yeah, that'll work. D R A W I stroke up, N stroke up, freehand, stroke up, freehand that G, drawing, title, stroke up on the verticals, freehand, horizontals, curves, and angles. Now, the scale is going to be underneath the line right about here. So, oh, I don't know. Let's imagine it's a 1/4 inch scale. That's a pretty typical one. So we can say, I don't even need to write scale. I can literally just write what the scale is. Architects and designers and engineers all know it's the scale. It's not wrong if you spell it out. So since this is a beginning drafting class, I'll spell it out. Scale. 1/4 inch equals 1 foot 0 inch. That's our scale. So what you can also see is that, here, let me move the T-square. We'll compare this. You can see that the notes are at 1/8 of an inch with 1/16 of an inch between them. This is an example of the alphabet at 1/4 inch. This is an example of using the 1/4 inch letters, right, the big ones, to write the title. You then give yourself a 1/4 inch space, do the underline. You can then write the scale at the 1/8 inch letters and bring it 1/8 inch below the underline for the title. Now, we don't need all these guidelines anymore. And so I'm going to use the eraser shield and clean this up a little. If I did not use the eraser shield and I just tried to erase, what you can see now is the guidelines here are gone. The guidelines immediately around the letters are still present. And now, assuming this is a real title, I can also do this. I place the eraser shield over what I want to erase. So in hand drafting, you don't erase the guidelines that are right framing the letters, because if you do, you might erase your letters by mistake. And even now we're going to ink, so we'll use this 01 micron pen. What you see now is this small triangle is underneath the T-square. The tape is down against the board, creating that tiny little air gap, so that now that I'm using ink, it will not wick underneath the triangle. So once again, I snug with my weak hand, I snug the head of the T-square against the board, slide my hand along it, rest my weak hand on the T-square. I'm ready to ink. So we'll just do the same title. Let's say drawing title. And this time I'll write the scale. I'll simply write 1/4 inch equals 1 foot 0 inch. You can see what that looks like. Look at the difference. I just really want you to notice this. Look at the difference with the contrast for the ink versus the lead. What a difference. So when you are photocopying or otherwise reproducing sets of prints from your drawing, if you do your originals in ink on vellum, the quality of the reproductions will be absolutely beautiful. So this has been your lettering tutorial on how to write architectural notes. And again, we did, let me show this once more, a note for an imaginary architectural drawing. The letters are 1/8 inch, they're all capitals. You drop down 1/16 inch and then you write your next line. If you were doing one note that was on multiple lines, this is exactly how you do it. If you had 6 different notes on a sheet of drawings, by grouping each note together like this, it's very clear that's one individual note. You then might allow an inch or a half inch and start the next note. So it becomes very clear each note is a grouping. Then we looked at titles. This is the 1/4 inch letter size that we use for titles when we're working at 11 by 17 sheet size. Title, skip 1/4 inch, give yourself an underline, skip 1/8 inch and write the scale at 1/8 inch. And now, I almost forgot this, we want to ink the underline also to complete our ink title. Check this out, it's going to be rather lovely. Since I'm moving the T-square, what I do is I use my weak hand and I snug the head of the T-square against the drafting board, slide my weak hand along, rest it on top of the T-square, and draw. There you go. Just like that. I lift the T-square away. Look at that. Again, look at the difference in the contrast. So I think you can tell why we like to do final drawings in ink. They're beautiful. Have fun with this. Take the time you need. At first, it may seem slow. It gets faster, especially if you're not talking while you're drafting. Thank you for watching.